Hey guys, it's Beth here today, and I am working with the May 2020 Flavor of the Month kit, and I am using the Weather Together collection. I decided today I didn't have a whole lot left of that collection, so I was going to go ahead and finish it off. So I am starting off with some little lunchbox notes. I took the green cardstock piece that came with my kit and cut it down. I made three 3x6 strips and then folded those into some 3x3 note cards. And then I took what was left. There was a smaller strip left, and I ended up cutting it down to 2.5x7 so that I could make a 2.5x3.5 inch card as well. And for some reason, I struggled to get that one folded straight. So I had one full sheet left in this collection. It's like a rainbow pattern. And then I had this sheet with a turquoise color solid on the back, and that was almost a whole sheet. So I'm going to cut that one down to be my mat for my note cards, and I think I end up pulling in a piece of turquoise cardstock scrap as well, because I didn't have enough to cover all four of my little lunchbox notes. And then this is the one full sheet I have left, and I'm going to use the white background side. And so I thought, oh, this is perfect because I should have plenty of paper to cover the 4 note cards. And because I cut my turquoise mat down to 2 7/8 square, and then this part I cut down to 2.5 inch square. But I forgot that my 4th card was not 3x3. So when I cut it down, I didn't leave a long enough piece to work for my 2.5x3.5 inch card. So here I'm going through all of the scraps that I have left and trimming them down so I can kind of see if anything will work for that tall, skinnier lunchbox note. And this is something I would have to do anyway because like I said, I'm going to try and finish off this collection, so I'm going to use those scraps on some cards later. But I fiddle for a bit and then finally decide to go ahead and move on with my little square notes. So I'm using my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper with a 1/4 inch rounded corner just around all the corners of my different pieces. And I realized I probably could have stacked several of them together and rounded the corners at the same time, but my brain has just been in a fog the last few days, and so I didn't have the capability of thinking outside the box at this moment. So it is what it is some days. So now that I have all of those trimmed down, I'm going to go ahead and put my layers together, and I'm just using some ATG on this one. And I thought about these little lunchbox notes because my girls are very into rainbows, and rainbows are uplifting and tend to bring happiness and joy. And I'm really hoping that our kids get to go back to school in some form this fall. And so I just had lunchbox notes on my mind, and I thought this paper paired with a nice positive sentiment would be cute little lunchbox notes for some girls. So here I am finishing up this last square card. And then I'm going to pull one of the sentiments from the Little Lady collection. And I'm also going to pull from the Benny the Bigfoot collection. There were these chalk heart-shaped stickers. And so I thought it would be cool to stamp my sentiment directly onto those stickers. And then I realized that it might stand out more if I actually heat emboss my sentiment. So right here, I am just trying to line up the You Are Awesome sentiment from that Little Lady collection, and it comes in 3 pieces, which is great because you can, then style it however you want. But those little bitty pieces, I had a hard time trying to get them lined up, all squished together for some reason. And I'm using just some Versamark ink and then the pink embossing powder that came in my kit. The first time I did it, when I stamped the sentiment awesome didn't stamp very cleanly, and so once I heat embossed it, it just looked like, I don't know, you couldn't tell that it actually said awesome at all. So I tried again on the one right above it, and it came out much better. Tried not to press so hard with my stamp, and it came out much cleaner. So you can see the difference right there. So I tried to do the other two as well, and one, I don't know if I put the heat on it for too long, but it went from being pink to like white. So I think I may have just left the heat on it too long and ended up kind of burning it a little bit. But so I managed to get 2 out of the 4 hearts done successfully. But I do like how they came out. I like the pink on the black. And I just think it adds a cute little touch to those cards. So because I messed up on 2 of those hearts, I'm just pulling in some of the scraps that I had from that collection. One side of the pattern paper had just a solid pink, and then there was the one that just had that solid turquoise. So instead of using the pink embossing powder that came in my kit, I decided to pull in what I thought was my white embossing powder, but it ended up drying more clear than I'd wanted it to. But because I didn't want to do the pink powder on the pink cardstock, and so I just thought I would do the white on both, but it still looks cool just with the embossed effect. So once I get my powder cleaned up, put away, I will go ahead and put my sentiments onto my little lunchbox notes. So the hearts, since I embossed them, I didn't want to trust that they would stay flat enough and stay sticky. So I did use some art glitter glue a little bit of art glitter glue on the back just to help hold them down since they kind of warped a little bit with the heat from the heat gun. So I did that on 2 of the square cards. And then on the last square card, I just used one of my scraps that I stamped on and trimmed it down and added a fishtail to one end and added it to the front of my card. And I just think these are cute little inspirational note cards that, you know, would hopefully make my girls smile when they found them in their lunch. And I fiddled with this one for a while, trying to get it lined up correctly just so I could shave off just a little sliver off of the top part of that little banner. So I just used some more art glitter glue on the back of that to adhere that to that 3rd little square card. And now I can move on to my 4th little lunchbox note, which was kind of the tall and skinnier one. And I still have to figure out what I want to put on the front of them, like as far as the pattern paper goes. And I know I wanted to use that rainbow striped pattern. And so just needed to figure out what I wanted to use for the other pattern, and I was just going to kind of piece them together to make a kind of mat onto the front of the card. So I just trimmed down the width of the white polka dot, or the white with the polka dots, and then trimmed down the length of both of them. And then I'm just trimming the bottom outside, or I'm rounding the bottom outside corners of both of those strips. And we'll just adhere them together. Whenever I'm adhering strips like this, I don't officially push the strips down onto the paper until I get both of them lined up, because as long as you don't press them down, you can still, even if you're using ATG, you can still move them around a little bit as long as you haven't like fully pressed them down. So a lot of times I'll lay it down gently and then get everything lined up, and then I can always scoot it if I need to. And then once all my little scrap pieces are down, I can push them all down together. So I'm using the turquoise sentiment, and then I realized that I wanted something else to help kind of hide the seam where the two pattern papers meet. And so I decide to bring in some of the flowers from the Benny the Bigfoot collection. They're like little glitter flowers, and they've got a gem in the center of them. So I adhere my sentiment, my You Are Awesome sentiment, kind of in the middle. And then I'm going to pick two of the brighter colored flowers. Since all the colors in this collection are pretty bright, I picked the orange and then that purple one because they were the brightest of the flowers that I had left. So here I'm using a card sketch for this next card, and I'm trying to use up some of the scraps. And the sketch that I used is My Favorite Thing, sketch number 114. And I actually had this half circle left from another card that I had made earlier in the month. And so I'm just adding a fishtail to the white background with the polka dots. And then that pink strip, I thought it would be perfect going across. It was like, didn't really have to do a whole lot to it for that strip that goes across the bottom, except for it was just a bit short. Like it wasn't going to cover the whole width of my card base. And so I ended up just slicing it, and then I'm going to try and piece it together onto my card front so that the part that has the gap is going to be hidden underneath that fishtail banner piece. And for my card base, I am just using a piece of the orange cardstock that came in my kit. So now I can go ahead and add my half circle and my fishtail banner, and it will totally cover up that gap there that I had for the orange piece. And when I decided that, these pieces would be perfect for this particular card, I hadn't really thought that far ahead as far as sentiment or embellishments. So I realized I did need to come up with a sentiment. And so I end up pulling out the stamp set from the Weather Together collection and decide to go with After Every Storm, There Is a Rainbow. I think that's what it says. And I figured it kind of tied into my card just because I had the rainbow chevron pattern and the rainbow polka dots. And then I decided that I needed some embellishments as well. And when I first got this kit, before I had even planned out any of the cards that I was going to make, I did stamp a lot of the images and do some coloring just to kind of get myself in the flow for the different patterns and themes. And so I had some that I hadn't used yet. So I decided to just pull in the clouds for the storm part of it, to go with the storm part of the sentiment. And these, like I said, I had already stamped them, colored them just a little bit. I think I'd used a little bit of gray around the outside and then used my blender to kind of pull that in. And then I did outline, I fussy cut them out and then had outlined them with a black marker just to help the edges stand out. So I add my clouds up here, and then now hopefully that ties in with the sentiment, because you got storm clouds and then you got rainbow pattern. So trying to use up some of those elements that I had left. So here I'm just going to do a real quick, simple card. I'm using the rest of that orange cardstock for my card base. And I'm just going to use those two strips that are about 2 inches wide. And so I end up trimming them down to 5 1/4 inches long. And then I'm going to piece them together as my card mat, and then I'll cover up the seam or the gap there in the middle with some scrap of turquoise cardstock that I had left from the kit. So here I am just going to trim it down. I didn't even pay attention to how wide it was. It's probably around 1/2 inch. So I'm going to add that there to cover up my little gap. And I had wanted it to be a little bit more off center than it was, but the way I had placed those scraps, it didn't work out. So I'm going to take another scrap of the turquoise cardstock that I had left, and I go die cut a stitch circle die, and then I also had a rainbow that I had already stamped and pre-colored and fussy cut out. So I figured I would go ahead and use it. And then I'm bringing in that "You Are Awesome" sentiment again. This time I just have it laid out kind of in a straight line. So I stamped that right beneath where my rainbow would go, and then I will just glue my rainbow down on top. So now I can go ahead and get all my pieces put together. And again, once I get these, the glue on the back of them, like I'll lay them down gently on my card base before I officially press them down. That way I can have a little bit of leeway to arrange them. And actually I didn't really need to rearrange them, so I can go ahead and press them down and now add some adhesive to the back of my little strip. So once I get that down, I can put my sentiment and rainbow piece on there. And I decided that I wanted it to be popped up a little bit, but I didn't want the height of foam, so I ended up just pulling in a scrap of cardstock. And I also decided that I wanted to add a little bit more to the card. It was very colorful, but it was just a little still plain. So I had a few sequins left from the kit, so I pulled in the ones that were the colors that coordinated with the colors in my paper, and used about 5 of those just to scatter around. So the cardstock scrap that I'm using on the back of my circle there, it adds just enough height to help it stand off of the card base a little bit more, but not so much height that it, you know, adds dimension and makes it harder to mail. So add that on, and then I figure, okay, I'm going to save time. I'll put my stamp block on there and hold it down while I do my sequins, not thinking that I needed to reach over it to add my sequins. So I'm trying hard not to stick my head on, like, right over the card so that I can see what I'm doing, because again, it didn't occur to me that I could turn the card around and, you know, have it upside down while I adhered those sequins at the top. Brain fog for sure today. So just finishing those up, and then this card will be done. So now I'm just pulling out all the scraps I have left from this collection. And I probably could get another card out of there if I kind of worked a puzzle. But I decided that I'm just going to save those, and I can go and add those little scraps onto the inside of all the cards that I have already made. So here is a set of Lunchbox notes, as well as the 2 cards I made today using up the last of that collection. Thank you guys so much for your time today, and if you are interested in this kit, be sure to subscribe. The link will be in the description box below. But I hope you're all having a crafty day.